This episode of Off My Shelf contains coarse language and adult conversation. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, my name is Tracy James and welcome to Off My Shelf, a podcast about movies that are, well, off my shelf, where we go through my DVDs and talk about the movies in my collection. In this episode, Michael Freethy is here to talk about the sci-fi classic Bladerunner and the action-filled Bourne Identity. Welcome!
Hi, Tracy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's an honor.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure. It's all my pleasure.
I know you have been very excited to do this episode because you absolutely love
Matt
Blade
Damon?
Runner, apparently.
No. Yeah.
Wait, you're joking about loving
That's
Matt
right.
Damon? Who doesn't like Matt Damon?
Probably the creators of South Park.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Besides them,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
doesn't like Matt Damon?
Yeah, exactly.
He's
That's
kind
true.
of cool.
Yeah,
Yes,
he
yes.
is. He's very cool.
So I know you're kind of like obsessed with Blade Runner and you said you want to dive deep into it.
Yeah.
So the suggestion I made, so we don't forget to talk about it, is that even though I usually do alphabetical order, we can talk about Bourne Identity first.
Sure.
And then we could do that deep dive into Blade Runner that I know you're really looking forward to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and not to take anything away from Bourne Identity, but Blade Runner is cooler. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, no, I rewatched Bourne Identity again the other day, and it was the first time I rewatched it in probably more than 10 years.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I regained an appreciation for the movie after watching it, and just doing some Googling online and whatnot about the director, and it really reminded me of, the film was groundbreaking.
It was
I
for the
felt
time
too.
period, yeah.
Yeah, for the time. So I mean, there's been at least 4 sequels, I think.
Yeah, there's Identity, Supremacy, Ultimatum, Legacy, and then
That's right.
Jason Bourne.
That's just plain first and last name now.
Yes, that's just who he is.
He knows who he is now.
But isn't in the end of Ultimatum, doesn't he find what his quote-unquote real name is, but he sticks with Jason Bourne because I guess he got used to it?
Yeah, I think so, but don't take my word for it. I don't know if I actually watched that film in its entirety, but I remember when Supremacy came out, that it really kicked things up to the next level, I felt, in terms of pacing, the editing, the action, and that they had different directors. There's Paul Greengrass when he came into the Bourne franchise.
Yeah.
At Supremacy, that the director, Doug Liman, of the first film, he set a precedent, but I felt that Paul Greengrass, he just took it to the next level, and just, I feel like it probably has done a lot more for action cinema in the last probably decade and a bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, I really do like the first movie, and Doug Liman, he did one of my favorite science fiction movies,
which is
of the last 10 years, and that's the Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh yeah, I really like that movie.
Or Live, Die, Repeat.
Yes, depending on where you're living. Yes.
Yeah, and they're working on a sequel. I don't know when it's coming out, but and I think because Live, Die, Repeat kind of, there's a lot more traction, and the public took more to that. If you look at, I don't know if it's in your DVD collection, but I'll give it to you. But on the cover, they underplay just on the design from when it was released theatrically to home video, Blu-ray, DVD, whatnot. Live, Die, Repeat is about 75% larger than Edge of Tomorrow on the cover.
Yes.
So Edge of Tomorrow just seems like a byline, but I remember when they were first publicizing that film, Edge of Tomorrow was really more what it was about, or what it was known as.
Because when it first came out, I remember seeing posters and trailers for it and just literally being like, what is this movie called? Like, I just couldn't figure out what the movie was called. And then finally it was saying like Edge of Tomorrow in theaters. I'm like, what the hell is Edge of Tomorrow? And I was like, oh, it's that
Very
Live,
cryptic.
Die, whatever movie.
Yes.
And then I was like, oh, that movie's great. Edge of Tomorrow. Done. You know, like, it's weird. It's really weird.
Yeah. And I think I saw on IMDb that the sequel, I think they're going with, it's like Live, Die, Repeat, and Repeat, or something at the end. So,
oh god. That's
anyways, I really like that. I really enjoyed that film. It was kind of like a surprise
Yes.
hit for me.
Yes.
So
I was kind of shocked as
yeah.
well when I saw it. And I got out of the theater and I was walking away and I was like, oh my God, that was good. What the
Yeah.
hell? Like, what? But I also think a lot of people had that same reaction when this Bourne Identity movie came out.
Yeah.
Because this was like Matt Damon's first action movie,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
And
he
before-
wasn't known for this kind of character, this kind of acting, right?
Yeah, and but he did such a good job with it,
Yeah.
And like even rewatching it, I was just like, oh my God, that looks amazing. Like it just looks good still.
Yeah, yeah. And it was I had to look it back up because I'm like, oh, how long ago did that come out? So it was 2002. So I think it came out in the same year or maybe months, either before or after. But Die Another Day, which the Bond film, with Pierce Brosnan, and you just think of how different.
Those two
when it
movies
comes
are.
to the spy genre, just like how different those like a Bond character is to Bourne at that point. So pre Daniel Craig,
Yes.
that Bond was really getting old and had jumped the shark with lasers and Madonna and all of that. So
oh God,
people were getting tired of Bond at that point.
Well, I don't think people were getting tired of Bond. They just weren't good movies.
Yeah,
is what the problem was.
That might have something to do with it too.
Wait, Die Another Day. Who was in? Is that the one that had
Halle
Halle Berry in it?
Yes.
Oh God.
Yeah, and she was supposed to get a spin-off at one point.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, she looks good in the bathing suit. Maybe we should
right.
give her own movie.
That's right.
No, no, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it really does show like the different styles of like action genre like that was out
100%.
there. And like even like the visual style of like fight sequences and stuff, because in the Bond movies, especially like the Pierce Brosnan and the Timothy Dalton movies, they don't physically fight people really. There's a lot of guns, there's a lot of car chases.
Yes.
There's a lot of like rolling down hills and stuff.
Not
but there's
too
no
much
like
hand-to-hand
combat. Yeah. So I always thought that was really odd. But
and that's mainly what you get in Bourne Identity, right?
Yeah. He does a lot of kicking people in the faces, and he gets beat down quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
I forgot how much he actually got like beat up. But then he really doled out a good like ass kicking to everybody.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, and just upon like rewatching the film, like what jumped out to me and what I saw different critics noting online was, especially for those kind of hand-to-hand close proximity kind of fight scenes, the absence of like a soundtrack.
Yes.
So very not like Fast and the Furious or anything of that nature. So when the action and fight scenes kick in, they usually ramp up the soundtrack with something that could be rock or electronic music, something to really get the heart beating.
Yeah.
But in Bourne Identity, I know several times that there's an absence of soundtrack, and all you hear is the sound effects of, someone getting punched in the face, or getting, kicked in the back or being tossed over. That those kind of sound effects kind of took front and center. Actually,
the scene that's like that actually stands out to me is the last scene where he's, oh crap, I'm gonna forget his name right now. He was in Children of Men.
Oh, Clive Owen.
Clive Owen, yes. So the last scene where like Clive Owen, he's in the field.
Yes.
And and he has to go, like Bourne has to go stop him.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And up until the point where they're like, get your kids in the basement. Where's your gun? He takes the gun and goes outside, and like the tank, he explodes that tank.
Yeah.
It's quiet. There's no music after that. All you hear is like the birds and the wind and their gunshots. And it is so intense.
Yeah, it's very poetic.
Because even when like Clive Owen's dying, he's like, do you get the headaches? It's still quiet. It's just them breathing.
Yeah.
And like they turn, like you can tell they turn up the like how loud their breathing is a little bit, just to be like they worked for this, something horrible is happening.
Yeah.
And then like that whole sequence purely quiet, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, and like just doing that, focusing on kind of like real, I guess, senses of like, they're out of breath.
Yeah.
He's dying. It just kind of added to more of the realism. That I think Bourne Identity, it kind of brought that back to a lot of filmmaking that happened afterwards. That people, they had seen so much kind of like fantastic kind of action film. So again, just going back to Bond, we're seeing things, kind of unrealistic stunts of basically anything that didn't seem like it followed the kind of laws of physics.
Yeah, like they were just like, the thing is, they were just ridiculous. Like they were, you were watching it, and whether you knew it or not, like 2-year-olds were like, "That's stupid." You know, you're like, you're seeing it, you're like, "That's dumb." That's all you're thinking of.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, like you get it that like most people, they go to the movies for escapism, but when something more hard hitting, or I guess kind of a little bit off the well-worn path, comes into theaters and kind of just came in a little bit unannounced. There wasn't too much in terms of like hype that was built around the movie, aside from its main star was, Academy Award winning from Good Will Hunting. It's Matt Damon in this new role. I mean, a lot of people turned their attention to it and were intrigued by, there wasn't like too many huge explosions or kind of like cities being decimated by a terrorist attack or anything like that. It was kind of on a smaller scale. Like that's, if you look at the later films, they get a little bit more budget and larger scale, whatnot. But this film, it's almost like an independent way of making an action film. And actually, there's one of the notes I took during it was, and looking them up online, but Doug Liman, he came from like an independent film background, which a lot of the big Hollywood types do.
Yeah.
But at this point, this was really his first kind of big Hollywood movie. He had done Swingers, which is another great movie from the 90s. Tracy's shaking her head no, saying, "What are you smoking?"
No, I understand the quote unquote importance of Swingers.
Sure.
But I do not like Swingers.
No problem.
Yes.
That's fair. You're your own person. I disagree, but that's okay. And Go, which was that kind of rave movie with Sarah Polley.
Love that movie. Yes.
And all of that. So he kind of like, I wrote a note. He says he's marrying an independent style of filmmaking with bigger budgets. So I think the film in itself is actually probably more remarkable than probably what maybe most fans kind of give it. That it really was different and kind of a bit of a reinvention of maybe the action film.
Well, I actually think they went back to old action movies. Yeah. When, like, I think that's where he gets his inspiration from, like his direction and all that kind of stuff. Because when you go back to older action flicks, it's more painful looking. You see the actual action, and during fight sequences, there isn't music. Like if you go back to like the 1960s and stuff like that, the music comes in when the fight is over. Yeah, like the bad guy's on the ground and the hero's winning, and then all of a sudden there's this crescendo of music. Like that's how it worked, right? So like I think that's one of the things I liked about it, but what made it good was they sort of tightened the story a little bit. There wasn't dead air. There wasn't like unnecessary sequences, which I find a lot of older movies had. Yeah. They just kind of tighten the story. They're like, no, this is point A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like they're just like one, like right off the bat, like continuous.
Yeah, and I think I felt like, I remember when like the film, when I watched it again this week, when it ended, I was like, oh, that's it. It's done. Yeah, we're not going to the top villain's like lair to
do anything
to take him down or get Commissioner Gordon to come in and handcuff him, take him to Arkham Asylum. But maybe I'm confusing my movies.
Maybe just a little bit, like I think that's actually one of the things that made it great, is that even though it left room for a sequel, because they pretty much knew they were going to do a sequel. Yeah. Bourne was pretty much just like, stop chasing me. Fuck off. I don't have to kill all of you. Just leave me alone, and I'm going to go over here do my business. Yeah. And that was it, you know? And tell you the truth, if they didn't continue it as a franchise, that would have been perfectly fine. Standalone film. But yeah, from there they were able to do the sequels, but I mean it is based on like Robert Ludlum's novels, and he's got like 20 books, I think, that's around Bourne, something like that. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with what they did with it.
Yeah, and like again, like maybe my just being trained when you think of like the spy film genre.
Wait, hold on. But he's not a spy though.
It's more of the it's not necessarily of him just, I guess, being categorized explicitly as a spy per se, but I guess more of like the kind of genre kind of tropes throughout the film with car chases, being vetted against, like a villain. Like a lot of the marketing promised all these high impact kind of action scenes. Like I know, yeah, he's an assassin and whatnot, but again, he was very much kind of like associated with an anti-Bond type of
feel,
kind of character, and I think that's what worked a lot with the success of the genre. And I mean, just look at, if you think of Die Another Day, Bond film, versus what they did next, Casino Royale, and just how different. Not so much that they casted, someone who's a little bit more rugged than a sharp dressed man like Pierce Brosnan with his hair is always perfect.
Daniel Craig,
but that
can
film,
be a very good sharp dressed man.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
But that film, Casino Royale, has definitely more. I feel like it has more similarities to a Bourne Identity movie than it does to a lot of the other Bond films.
Well,
when you think of just how it's shot and pacing.
It's directed and shot in the same kind of style, like that very gritty, close-up, hand-to-hand combat that's in it a lot, which a lot of the Bond movies, as we mentioned, were steering away from, because, like, even though, like, Sean Connery's Bond had a lot of gadgets and stuff, he did do a lot of hand-to-hand fighting in it.
Yeah.
And then when you hit Roger Moore, that was kind of taken out. Then you hit Timothy Dalton. It came back in a little bit, but it was still more gadgets. And then Pierce Brosnan, even though I thought he could have been a great Bond, he just got the shittiest movies to do. And I literally feel bad for him, because I think he would have been fantastic if he was just given a good script and a good director, and it was just put together
I did like GoldenEye. I think that was the only Pierce Brosnan one that I was like, yeah, this is a decent movie.
It is. It's not bad.
And the video game's awesome too.
I wonder if that's why people actually like
Probably.
GoldenEye. They're like, you say GoldenEye, they think of the video game, and then they mix up the movie or something. They're
Bringing
like,
it back to N64, like, it's getting crazy in here.
Look, people search for like emulators and stuff just to get their hands on that game. They're still saying it's the great, like, one of the greatest games ever.
Yeah.
So can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. But yeah, like, I mean, I just like the fact that it was a good action movie.
Yeah.
You had a simple premise, and then he's out looking for answers, but you don't really get answers, but you don't really care either, because
you do in the other films, but in this one on its own, I remember at the end, I'm like, so what did we learn?
Nothing.
Not much.
No, he's a guy,
and I'm okay with that.
He has amnesia, and he can beat people up. Good.
That's right.
I'm fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's okay, And, like, you have, like, great actors in it, like Chris Cooper, who would have just come off of
that's right.
Adaptation and American Beauty.
Yeah.
And he goes from, like, those very... Well, I guess this, as we were saying, this is sort of indie as well, but, like, those kind of, like, indie Oscar-type movies to this, like, action-y, different level kind of thing. It was, like, pulling people out of their regular realm, you know, of
Wasn't
things.
Tommy Lee Jones or... I don't know, some other older white guy in Hollywood.
I mean, it was just another old white guy, but
that's right.
It's fine. And I noticed Walton Goggins was in it. Is that how you say his name?
Oh, Walton here, I'm looking it up.
Was in it, and I was just like, oh my god, he looks so young. I didn't realize he was been around for this long. I mean, I really shouldn't.
So is Julia Stiles.
Julia Stiles? Well, she's in 3 of the movies, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, she's in a couple of them.
And who else? Of course, Clive Owen we already mentioned. Yeah. And I noticed, for the first time, he had a Canadian passport when he was flipping through his passport, which I thought was hilarious.
That's interesting.
So, yeah. And that closing song and the credits by Moby was fantastic.
Yeah, that's right. When we watched it, my wife was like, is that Moby? I'm like, yeah, remember when you couldn't turn on the radio
without hearing
or
by him?
watching like just commercials in between shows?
Yeah.
Like I remember that, I don't know if it's from that album, but Play.
Yes.
That which was his like biggest album.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing that like every single track. This was kind of like a milestone that was unheard of. But every single track on that album had been licensed commercially for commercial use. Like every single track on that was like, what?
Yeah, I
That's
believe
crazy.
he was the first artist to do that successfully.
Yeah, every single track on that, which is just crazy.
Because licensing your song for commercials was pretty much unheard of. Like there were parody versions, but the actual song being used in an ad and thing was not a thing. And I think the first one was like a car commercial, if I remember correctly.
He
don't remember which one, but
he's made a shit ton of money off of it.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's still sitting on a good mound.
Good pile. Yeah, I mean it's his like. He really doesn't have to do anything based on that licensing.
No.
Even if it's not commercials, it's the movies he's licensed to and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He's made it. He's good.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Moby? Anyways.
He's still around. I know he made headlines recently. He said something that offended some other big star.
Oh wait, yeah, there was a dating controversy. Was it that?
Oh,
was that Moby?
Yeah, I think he said he dated someone and did something inappropriate.
Natalie Portman, that's what it was.
Yeah, and she like denied it 100%.
Yeah.
I don't even know if she confirmed if they ever dated.
No,
officially or not.
She said something about him. She just remembers this older creepy guy being around her.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. I believe, if I remember correctly, that's what she said. And then he got all like, no, we went on a date and blah 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 blah.
Yes, you're
but
right.
But then when you think about it, at the time period, she would have been underage, so that would have been inappropriate, which got him in different kind of trouble, and then had to take it back. So yeah,
either way, not good.
Not either way, exactly. Either way, it's just don't know.
Now I had one kind of thing that I picked up on when I was watching the movie. The actress who's his, I guess, love interest or whatnot, who's opposite Matt Damon, by her name, I never knew what her name was.
Yeah, she's from Run Lola Run.
Exactly. Yeah. Franka Potente. I'm probably
killing the name.
That,
yeah. Okay.
But A for effort. Mm-hmm. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's cool, because I didn't know she was in the other American tentpole kind of movies or whatnot. But I'm just looking on. She was in the Bourne Supremacy.
Well, yeah, because she gets killed right at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, I totally
Sorry,
forgot about that.
spoiler alert. Am I supposed to say that? I don't know. Yes. Anyways.
It's been out for 15 years, so I think it's fine.
Sucks to be you. Yeah.
But yeah, her hair wasn't red. I was like, oh, that's not your natural hair color.
Mm-hmm.
But again, back to Run Lola Run.
Another great movie.
Hey, when you get when you have your episode lined up for Run Lola Run, give me a call. Mm-hmm. Love that film.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
That was a big one in film study school.
Really? Is it because of like the time loop kind of repeating thing?
Yeah, just for it being so unconventional. Just especially for like a Western audience. Watch it.
But it wasn't like, it's not an American movie.
No. But for any kind of like anyone who doesn't watch art cinema watching this film, but I mean at its like kind of basic kind of DNA, it is an action film, but it's pretty cool and it's very weird.
I would actually start at it's a sci-fi film that's got lots of action in it. See, I always think of Run Lola Run as a sci-fi film and then an action movie. Because it's sort of like Groundhog Day.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So like
we've gone back to Live, Die, Repeat.
There you go. Yeah.
Boom. My job's done here.
I've never considered that movie to be weird or strange. I just thought it was a great use of the concept. But that's I never thought it was like an odd movie or artsy or anything.
I guess because I'm trying to remember. It's been so many years since I've seen it, but I remember every time the kind of narrative storyline would restart, you'd have that kind of like animated sequence where I think she's running down the stairs and all that. I just, for some reason, I get like 80s videos in my brain when I think about that sequence. Yeah. And just like the pacing and cutting, and it's almost very much like Trainspotting.
Yeah, well,
Kinda
it's
bit
very.
like
That's the
Danny
thing.
Boyle.
It's very European, right?
Exactly.
It's not an American style sci-fi action movie. It's a very European style, like sci-fi action movie because it's more. I think they go for more jarring, more
100%.
like make you think compared to like just handing you stuff and pew pew pew. Like it's a little bit more than that, right?
Yes.
So yeah,
Well, I
no,
think
I get it.
it's just when myself being, a little half Filipino, half Caucasian boy from the GTA,
Uh-huh.
watching a movie like this against, other films of that period, The
Mhm.
Matrix or whatnot,
Mhm.
it just really stands out to me
Yeah.
as being again, it's almost like when you think of action films and a film that kind of is outside of the cookie cutter,
Mhm.
like Bourne Identity is definitely one of those,
Outside of
and
it,
this
yeah.
this kind of does the same
Mhm.
for me in that respect.
I
But
think
maybe
that's-
if I grew up in Europe, maybe
Mhm.
I'd be like,
Meh.
Run Lola Run, boring.
No, I actually do think it's definitely different. Like I think that time period of films, unlike now, they were actively trying to let people do different things in films and
Yeah.
stuff and see what would work and
Yeah.
all that kind of thing. So that's why I think movies like Run Little Run and like Bourne Identity, where they had like unconventional casting and unconventional director and they kind of went for a different feel to what that was out there, was allowed because they were looking for different ways to tell these stories because they were getting bored. Whereas
Yeah.
now, like, they seem to just be rehashing everything over and over and over again. It's driving me crazy.
Yes, lots of reboots
Yeah.
and
Remakes and or reimagining is the new word that
yes,
they like to
exactly.
use.
Yeah, whenever I see like a Halloween movie coming out, I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, guys, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's hard to keep on top of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, you get a lot of people who they say that Hollywood's running out of fresh ideas.
Mm-mm.
But it's kind of like, well, that's kind of been the case for a long time.
I actually think Hollywood's just not letting people show their fresh ideas because they're so scared of losing money.
Yep,
You
the
know,
risk.
like I think there's lots of room for risk out there, and I think there's lots of people with really good ideas.
Yep.
But they're just like, yeah, we can do this random thing that nobody's ever heard of before, or we can make a Star Wars movie that will make $1 billion automatically.
Exactly.
What are we gonna do? It's like
Reboot Star Wars.
Yeah. So I bet you when that 9th movie come out like a year later, they're like, oh, we're restarting the whole franchise.
Whole Skywalker franchise. Yeah, that's
And
right.
you're like, okay, sure.
Starring one of the kids from Stranger Things.
No, it's gonna be all the kids from Stranger Things. What are you talking
That
about?
I'd actually pay to see that. Yeah, those guys are awesome.
Yes. One thing I realized in the movie too, like this movie is from 2002, which I guess in my lifetime I don't feel like it's that long ago. Like I feel like things aren't.
I'm right on board with you. When people tell me 2002, that's 17 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm in utter shock.
You're just like, what?
Because I remember that was the first year I left home, went to university.
Yeah.
And I feel like ever since I left my bubble
Mhm.
back home, time has accelerated.
Right?
And now I'm in my mid 30s and I'm like, can I go back?
It's so painful to think about. It's so painful.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Yeah. And the thing is, I was looking at so like they're like the spy guys, the Treadstone guys or whatever, like their room of stuff. Like and you see their big ass monitors on there, the piles of paper.
That's right.
They all have like these tiny cell phones that you can't send text messages and pictures on.
The CRT
You're like,
monitors. I loved it.
What is even happening here? Why is everything so bulky? It's weird.
Yes.
like every time they picked up a cell phone, it was like 3 inches long and barely touching their face. I'm like, oh yeah, we all had one of those Nokias. I remember that.
Yeah, Hardy phones, man.
Yes.
I love the fact that they relaunched that phone like last year, or
That's
the year
right.
before, or whatever.
A little
Because
bit of nostalgia now.
yeah, and but people bought that phone because it doesn't break.
No.
You can do. I bet you if I wouldn't be surprised if I can find this phone. I had one of those phones, and I bet you if I plugged it in, it would, even though it's been sitting in a box somewhere for like 15 years, it'll probably turn on just fine.
Yeah,
make a
it'd be
couple of
ready
phone
for
calls.
service.
Yeah, it'd be
Pick
good.
me up and phone someone and talk to someone. What else do you want to do with me?
Right?
What's wrong with you?
Exactly. Ugh.
I think I wrote this down. I don't know if I listened to the commentary, found this online, but there's a couple other actors who were considered for Jason. They're pretty funny for Jason
really?
Bourne.
Yeah.
Before they arrived at Matt Damon. So try to imagine a Jason Bourne movie with any one of these guys. So I'll start Russell Crowe.
Oh God, no.
Okay. So he would have. When did Gladiator come out? Was that late 90s or early 2000s?
I think it's early 2000s as well.
But he had done. Obviously, he would have been an obvious contender because he'd done several like big action movies. I feel like at that point.
Yeah, because I think but he hadn't done action movies really.
Let's see.
Gladiator came out in 2000, so he had already done that.
Was it 2000? Okay.
Yeah.
And that was a big hit.
That was huge, yeah.
That was a big one.
People said they were surprised it was so big, but I'm like, really? I guess it's sort of like a historical
swords and sandals.
Drama. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get those outlandish, car shooting missiles while skating on ice sequences kind of thing. So
exactly.
I get it.
Sylvester Stallone.
Oh my God.
That one I had a good laugh about. And I mean the
Wow.
guy I mean he, okay. He's still in pretty good shape considering he's got to be in his 70s now, right?
Probably. I think he's in his mid to late 60s.
Is he?
Say.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that's
He's
easy
gonna come
to
beat
find
me
out.
up now. But Sly Stallone, which that would have been interesting. Now this next one, I thought actually,
Oh wow, he is in his 70s. Sly Stallone
How old
was
is
born
he?
in 1946.
Woo!
So that means he is 73?
Is he really?
Jeez.
Now this next one, I actually think might have worked. Brad Pitt.
That would have worked. But I think it's because it's a close enough look to Matt Damon, right? And Brad Pitt had already done
Fight Club
at that point, So he already had that like lean kind of look to him and stuff.
Yeah.
So that would have been fine.
Yeah.
I could see that one.
And Matthew McConaughey.
I mean,
he is brilliant. He's a brilliant actor in and of himself.
Yeah. I actually don't think he would be bad, except for the southern drawl would throw people off. Because especially the parts where he has to speak like different languages and things, I don't think it would have worked as well. It'd be like, imagine him like breaking into Russian with like a southern accent.
That would have been interesting.
It would have been very interesting for sure. Those are very
interesting
like varying lists. Yeah, like that's
and different kind of generational lists too, of like a Stallone to a Brad Pitt.
Yeah, because Stallone would have been in his late 50s.
Was he?
Like already, yeah. To do that compared to like Matt Damon and stuff who were in their late 20s or
Matt
30s
Damon was
and
like
stuff.
a baby in this.
Yeah, he was so young. I know.
I'll watch it. I'm like,
wow, what?
Exactly.
But he also looked really thin. I guess it's because of all like the working out and the jumping around and all that kind of stuff. But I thought he looked really thin.
Yeah, I do know he. Well, I mean, like most actors for kind of very physical roles, I know there was like a very strict kind of regimen for training for this movie.
Yeah.
He's super lean but I mean, he's still in a pretty good shape. I feel now, and
no, I don't.
He'll throw in the pounds for a role. He's throw Christian Bale at them, and
Christian Bale with his fluctuating weight is. Oh my God. Gee, I'm surprised he's alive from
method
that.
actor to the max.
Seriously, it's
Yeah.
nuts. I mean, he went straight from Batman to the Mechanic and back to Batman. That was like a difference of I think it was like 100 pounds or something. He had to lose and put back on in like 6 months or something like that. It was something ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's like you are and
I haven't seen the Dick Cheney biopic or
I haven't
Dick
seen
Cheney
that one
movie, but it's supposed
either.
to be really good. He's supposed to be really good in it.
Yeah.
But I have one note here. I talked a little bit about being the anti-Bond, but he's kind of being this anti-intellectual, or sorry, it's against an anti-intellectual kind of action hero.
What do you mean?
So if you think of someone like Bruce Willis in the Die Hard movies, how great character, John McClane, but he's a cop. He lives in your neighborhood.
Yeah, but he's average Joe who's in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yep.
Yeah.
For Die Hard 1.
Yeah. And then Die Hard 1, 2, and 3 he's purposefully put in that position. But wrong place,
Another
wrong time.
great film from the 90s.
Yes. And whereas like I find any like mercenary, assassin, spy movies, I find they're always quote unquote intelligent because they're all like highly trained and all that kind of stuff, Whereas like the regular Joe Blow action movie is, it's guy next door. He's just gonna pretend he knows what he's doing and then wing it and kill some other people and hopefully live by the end.
Yeah, like I guess I was thinking like a little bit about John McClane, but also like Lethal Weapon. Riggs.
Yeah, he was a military man.
Yeah, but when it comes to when they're like engaging in the fights or whatever, they're kind of like using kind of like faith in the sense that, okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm not going to really think about the consequence of jumping over that building into there. I'm just going to do it. Or they're shooting up my RV trailer here. I'm just going to hide and I'm just going to go out and I'm going to kill them all.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
They don't have a plan, is that what you're saying?
Essentially.
Yeah.
And I feel like with the Jason Bourne character, he's much more calculating in terms of how he's going to, get himself from point A to point B, how he's going to do this step and then do the next step so that he can get closer to finding out like his true identity.
Yeah.
In a sense.
But that's built into the character, right? Because like even like there's sequences in it where he's just like, I have to do this thing, and you literally see him look around a room for certain things, and then he puts together a plan. He's like action hero MacGyver, like gonna make this happen, right?
Right. Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of the Mission Impossible, the first feature.
Yes.
With Tom Cruise.
Yes.
Like they're still making Mission Impossibles.
But those Mission
today.
Impossible movies are so different from that first movie.
Yeah.
That first movie is like, I really like that first movie. A lot of people don't anymore.
De Palma, right?
But like that first movie is great.
It's smart.
And then that second movie is absolute garbage. And then from the third movie on, it's a completely different genre than that first movie.
It is. It's very different.
But they're great. They're great action movies.
Yeah. No, I love the first Mission Impossible. The second one, I mean, I do have a bit of a guilty pleasure when it comes to John Woo movies. But I remember coming out of that movie being, that was shite. That was absolute shite.
Yes.
Because I went in with expectations that it would follow more in line
with the first.
I mean, just being maybe a stupid film goer.
Yeah.
Just looking at kind of the franchise brain, but not really knowing too much about John Woo at the time. I was expecting a little bit more of the first movie. Yeah. Something that had, I guess, more of like a narrative that had more substance.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the first movie that keeps you guessing, all the time, and then part 2 was just like full blown.
The thing is, part 2 wasn't even full blown anything. Like it was just. Like, I found everything about that movie was bad. The storyline was bad. The reason why there was a Mission Impossible was bad. The action sequences were shot and edited together horribly. The effects were hideous. Like, everything about the movie was horrible. Horrible.
What about Tom Cruise? Because he grew his hair out for that movie.
He grew his
hair
out for that
very
one
clean
as well.
cut in the first one.
Yeah, yeah. And, but I mean, like, I don't think it really has anything to do with his look per se, because the movies that came after, he's neat and everything, but he definitely grows, his hair length goes different from movie to movie. Yeah. But I think it's just the way the movies are constructed, like their reasons for calling out the IMF are better, quote unquote. Yeah. The action sequences and how they build the story to how they're gonna save the day is better, and stuff like that. Like it's very different from the first movie. Like I find they seem to be two completely different franchises, but like those movies, they're great. They're great action movies. They're great fun. You can enjoy it. You're what suspension of disbelief isn't broken from
Yeah.
like the horribleness of all of it. So it's
Just think
fine.
of all of the steps that Tom Cruise gets in those movies because he's always running.
Oh my God, yes. He runs
If he's not on a
so
motorcycle,
much.
it's always running. It's like a
Yeah.
marathon, like an
And
actual
he
marathon.
like majorly hurts himself on every single
Yeah.
one of those movies because he insists on doing his own stunts, right?
100%.
Yeah, which is crazy. Because in the last movie he did for it, like, he jumped from one building to another, broke his leg in some crazy way, and that's actually the cut they kept in the movie.
Yeah, it's a very Jackie Chan kind of thing to do.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So, Yeah, but I mean, surprisingly, I think with this movie, I have very little notes simply because I started watching it, and then that was it. I was like, oh, it finished, and I forgot to write things down. Like, that was it. Like that's all that happened, right?
Yeah,
So-
I just felt like I remember the end. Like there was a decent fight scene, but I felt it ended abruptly. But they were opening it up for Supremacy.
Yes, yeah, they were.
They knew they
Mhm.
wanted to make another one after.
Wanted to make the more of the movies. Yes. Yeah. This was just the introduction, and the real story will come after.
Yeah, exactly.
Intrigue. And ooh la la. Do you have any more?
Not so much on this movie in particular.
Mhm.
I have a couple points about some of the other movies, but
Yeah.
if do you have any of the other Bourne movies on your DVD
I
shelf?
do not actually. This
You
was the
don't?
only Bourne movie that I had, or else we'd do
Is
a
it?
Bourne episode. Yeah. It's the only one I got.
Yeah, I mean, for this film, I don't have much. Oh, just one other tidbit is that Sarah Polley was considered for the role of the female.
Sarah Polley.
Yeah, because the
Really?
director
Knew
he
her,
worked,
I guess,
Yeah,
with
he worked
Go.
with her from Go.
Yeah.
So he offered it to her first,
Mm-hmm.
but she turned it down. I
Was
forget.
it too actiony?
I'm
for
not
her?
sure. I forget why. I actually think she was just busy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because she was busy for a while in that time period.
Yeah,
'Cause
and
she did Go. She did Dawn of the Dead. She did.
oh yeah, that one.
What's the genetic one she did with the guy with the nose? Species. Was that Species? No, that wasn't
Or
her.
Splice.
Splice.
Very Cronenberg-like movie, but
yeah.
not directed by Cronenberg, surprisingly.
And there was what else? There was a couple of other things she did in there.
She did a lot of directed a few of her own films.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what she's doing now, but
Yeah, she's around.
Road to Avonlea reboot? Is that what we're hoping for?
I don't think so.
2020.
It's coming. It's gonna happen. Yeah. Well, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's all I got.
I guess we can move on to the pièce de résistance, which you have been looking forward to.
The Craggle?
Where's the lid for the Craggle? What? We are, talking about this sci-fi epic that is Blade Runner.
Yeah.
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 I
do
know. So wait. So when you decided to do this, you were like, "I love Blade Runner. I wrote this thing about it." Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
What was this thing that you wrote about it?
So my wife told you I did a thesis on it, but I didn't do when I was in university. I didn't do like a thesis specifically about the film.
Mm-hmm.
I may have referenced it,
Mm-hmm.
but I did a guest lecture
Yeah, about Blade Runner.
about Blade Runner for
Yeah.
it was a first year film class.
Yeah.
I wasn't in first year, but it was for a first year intro course.
Yeah.
And the film of that week, when I was a TA, professors, we were looking at the syllabus, and he's like, "Yeah, any of these films appeal to any of you guys?" And we go through it, and as soon as I saw Blade Runner, I'm like, mine. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
That was when I was at Carleton.
Yeah. So
So
wait.
that's like
Okay.
10
So
years ago now.
2 questions with that. First, you said you may have referenced the movie in your thesis. What was your
that's-
thesis about?
Well, my undergrad thesis was about. Man, I don't even remember really what it was about. Aside from, I know it had things to do with like memory,
Mhm.
technology, robots, androids, science fiction cinema.
That all goes with this. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, that makes
exactly.
sense.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
just remember like 2001: A Space Odyssey was a
Yeah.
big one in there. I think RoboCop,
Yeah.
Starship Troopers. So all the classics.
I'm assuming The Matrix would have been part of that as well.
Yeah. But
What about Jean-Claude Van Damme's Cyborg?
That's right. Or even better, Time Cop.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think he had a full-on mullet in that one.
He did. He
did. I just remember the hair.
Yes. Oh, wow. Yeah, that brings back memories for sure. So then, okay, so that was your thesis, but okay, so what was the class, like your class that you taught was just about the movie and like themes in it and stuff?
Yeah, so it was a first year intro course, and I think I'm trying to remember what the theme of that week was. Mm-hmm. It might have been like postmodern cinema or genre, science fiction. I can't really recall for sure, but I remember like when that opportunity came up, I know that it was the latest kind of cut of Blade Runner was just released, and it's called The Final Cut. This is it. I'm not going to cut it anymore. But it was like a 4-disc set. And there was also like, I remember I cheaped out, but you could have bought there was like a special kind of collection case. It looks like the briefcase that Deckard brings around to do his...
the Void contest?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, aside from that, I don't know what other bells and whistles, but I just went straight for the goods, the content.
Yeah.
Cheaped out. I was a poor student, so there you go.
Yeah. You take what you can get.
Exactly.
That's it.
But I remember that cut had just come out around the time that I had to prepare for the guest lecture, and it was perfect timing because there's a really good documentary that's on one of the discs of that set. I think it's called Dangerous Days, but that documentary was really probably the most kind of intensive study of
Dangerous Days.
And that was, I believe, that was a working title for Blade Runner, because it's based on the Philip K. Dick.
Do androids dream of electric
yeah,
sheep?
And they weren't going to call the film that, but I think Dangerous Days was a tentative title for some time. But anyways, that's the name of the documentary. Mm-hmm. And there's just really good kind of content, interviews.
Dangerous Days, the making of
Blade Runner,
yes.
yeah.
2007.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there was lots of interviews with Ridley Scott, with different production people, special effects. There's lots of big names that were tied to this film that I hope to get into with you.
Yeah. No, that'd be cool.
But this, I mean, before that kind of edition came out, I actually came late when it comes to, I guess, like just Blade Runner kind of fandom. Mm-hmm. Probably it was a first year film class when I was an undergrad. It was the first movie for science fiction in this intro to film studies class. Mm-hmm. Now I remember I skipped the screening of the movie. I'm like, oh, one of my roommates has the movie. He had a copy of the director's cut.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I think in class we watched. It was like the original U.S. theatrical version. Mm-hmm. So I mean, in most Hollywood films, that doesn't make much of a difference. But when it comes to Blade Runner, it kind of makes all the difference. Mm-hmm. So I think I remember. I think I effed up one of the answers on like when we had our exams. Mm-hmm. It was talking about like voiceover and whatnot. I'm like, I ain't hear no voiceover in the director's cut.
Yeah.
But that's one of the huge things that Ridley Scott cut out when in '92 when he did the director's cut.
Yeah.
And then there's he has more reasons for why he did a final cut besides, I'm sure, making some money on the anniversary.
You said there's 4 versions of it?
Yeah, I think like.
So there's the original, there's the director's, there's the.
There was an international version that came out.
That was slightly different.
Yeah, that came out. There's the differences are very slight, but when the U.S. theatrical version first came out in '82, there was an international version that came out. But the biggest, I guess, contrast when you look at all 4 versions, it's from the '82 films to the director's cut.
Yeah.
And then really he pushed things a little bit further for the final cut, but a lot of the changes are kind of more aesthetic.
Yeah.
So just a bit of like the coloring of different scenes and things like that. That's mostly what's relevant to the final cut, but really the director's cut is more the definitive kind of, we're going to pull out that voiceover because Harrison Ford didn't want to do it. Yeah. He half-assed his performance, and Ridley Scott never wanted to do it, but the producers of the film at the time with early test screenings before they released it in '82, a lot of the audiences were leaving the theater and gave their feedback. They're scratching their head, and they're like, "I don't understand city speak. I don't understand this. What really happened in the movie?" There's so many kind of ambiguities that got the studios kind of concerned.
Yeah.
So one of the, I forget what the gentleman's name is, but one of the producers said, "Oh, what about we put a voiceover into the movie?"
Okay.
So, I mean, in general, voiceovers can be, pretty effective. I mean,
It depends how they're used.
it depends,
Yeah.
the context, right? So, I mean, you can kind of add that, Blade Runner's kind of a, it's coined as a neo-noir or future noir kind of movie. So it's got a lot of kind of film noir elements.
That's true,
Those hard-boiled detectives, Humphrey Bogart type from the 40s. So in a lot of those movies, voiceover was, that was one of kind of the genre tropes was that you're hearing an internal monologue from the main character. It's just people talking to themselves. I mean, I have an internal voiceover
I think
all the
we
time,
all
but
do.
yeah.
Hopefully on some level. And
If
it's
you're
not
having
telling us to
conversations
kill anything.
with multiple personalities, then maybe you should go see someone.
Yeah, that's a different issue for sure.
But with Blade Runner, it was a thing that was done very last minute, and like Harrison Ford, he was hesitant about the whole idea. Ridley Scott, he didn't want to do it, but Ridley Scott at the time, I think this was only his third.
It was one of his very early
third
ones,
feature films. Like the one that came before is Alien, which is, I mean, that film's a not just a science fiction masterpiece, but just a cinematic masterpiece, right? And a lot of people's opinions. So he had a lot of clout, but again, he was still very new to working in Hollywood. He had done so many commercials. So you think of like one of his most famous commercials is the Apple. That's very Orwellian with the woman throwing
the hammer.
It's a hammer. I was trying to think. For some reason, I thought it was a guitar. That'd be awesome. But throwing the hammer, through Big Brother. But he had done like hundreds of different high-profile commercials at the time.
Yeah.
So, but he didn't. He still didn't have probably the artistic control that he did later on in his career. And just listening to some of the commentary that he's done on the film and watching the documentary bits and pieces of it again, I really do like Ridley Scott. He's definitely a true kind of like auteur and director. The way that he discusses Blade Runner is he's, some people would be like, wow, this guy has control issues, but he makes it very plain. At the time, my role as director is to be, at the helm of the ship. So it's my movie and we're going to make my movie. But there's definitely, studios still had more power over him at this time because he was still relatively new. So he was very happy when he was able to, make these kind of like directorial decisions later on, celebrating different anniversaries with Blade Runner. So with a director's cut, that's 10 years after, and then 2007 final cut, that's 25 years, right? Yeah. There's lots to say about the voiceover.
As he's sitting here turning all the pages on his notes.
Click. I got so many notes. So many notes.
Again, this was one of those movies where I have very little notes because I find what happens when a movie is especially captivating for me is I tend to not nitpick. I tend not to pull things out. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, this person in that movie, and then I'll write that down or something. But that's about it. Like that's what happened with this one again. It's like I was watching it and I wasn't even thinking about it. Like I find it interesting that it popped up on the screen. This movie happens in November 2019 in LA. And I'm like, where the fuck are my flying cars? There's no pyramids built in LA as far as I'm concerned.
You have to wait till the stroke of midnight
on
Halloween at the end of Halloween, November 1st. It's gonna turn on like a switch.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have a flying car. Is that what you're saying?
And you're gonna see Hades. That LA is gonna look like Hamilton. So I make that joke because I think I cracked a joke because my undergrad I did at Brock University, and you had to take the Skyway if you're leaving the Niagara region and you're going through the GTA. So I always pass through Hamilton.
Yeah.
And I mean, I haven't been in Hamilton in a few years, but I remember driving through the Skyway. Every time I'd look over.
Yep.
It's industrial. There's different smokestacks and fire
coming out.
And
It's some kind of refinery that's on the water. Over
yeah,
there.
exactly.
And yeah, it's very jarring because you see, like, you're going over the Skyway. You know, what is it, Lake Ontario you're going over, right? And it's just like water on this side, water on that side.
And they turn over and you're like,
trees,
holy shit, what's that?
Head. Yeah, and it's like that scene from Blade Runner at the side, and then you pass it, and then it's just houses and stuff, and you're just like, oh, that was weird. Gotcha.
No. I know that there's more to Hamilton than that. I do know that. There are some lovely spots.
There are very.
However, from the Skyway, it looks like Hades from Blade Runner.
It's very true.
Yes.
Cannot disagree. But yeah, no, so I'm waiting for my flying cars in 4 months. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
One thing also I've realized about not just this movie, but older movies is the amount of smoking that happens, especially indoors.
That's
right.
right.
And I know it gives that really cool effect that people are, in this haze and they're sort of hidden and
it's a good
kind
lighting
of stuff.
tool. Yeah.
It's a good lighting tool, but at the same time, I'm just like, it must stink in there. You guys have secondhand smoke, and you are gonna die from lung cancer and all this kind of stuff. And nobody smokes in LA right now. So unless that comes back in the next couple of months, oh my God.
So we avoided Judgment Day. Is that what you're saying? It looks like we're gonna avoid Judgment Day.
Yeah, apparently we're gonna make it, guys. It's gonna be amazing. And my other thing was, so you already touched on the neo futurist style that's on it, and a lot of movies that are in that style, I've realized, when setting up their cityscapes, lean heavily on like Far East Asian looks, styles, and feels. Because I mean, in this, it's like he's at noodle bars. There's I don't know, Chinese or Japanese writing all over the wall.
Yeah, there's graffiti.
There's graffiti
everywhere.
Like people. They're
a lot of the secondary or the non-speaking parts. A lot of them are Asians.
Yeah, and I always found that interesting in movies like that because they even like brought it back with TV shows like Firefly, where it's the far future, but they speak Chinese, right? They speak Cantonese, is what it is. And like that Asian culture is brought back in because it's the future. Yeah. And I've always wondered if that was based on like fear demographics because of like the population expanding and they're gonna take over the world, or is it just like because they're so far away, especially in 1984? Yeah. China and Japan and all that kind of stuff wasn't as open, quote unquote, as it is now, and it was considered to be like an alien thing. So that alien thing coming into our new space, making it so different. I think,
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember, but they did touch upon like a bit like what was the motivation to, really bringing that kind of Far East culture into LA. Like when you look at Blade Runner, you're like, oh, this is Los Angeles. Like even though it's in the not so distant future, but a couple decades from when the film came out.
Sorry, they did it in Big Hero 6 as well.
Oh, that's right.
Boom. Sorry, I was like, there's one other movie I was supposed to remember. What was it? Sorry, yes, that's what it was. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
I think a lot of it was at that time out there, things were moving pretty quick and seemed like they're more advanced. But in terms of just like Asian culture seeming to be, more advanced when it comes to a lot of cultural elements or just like in terms of like city design and culture. I think I'm trying to remember, but I remember Ridley because he was so hands-on. He was basically a micromanager is what a lot of the other people or cast or crew were saying. Yeah. I mean, they're complimentary on the documentary, but that's maybe because Ridley's just over their shoulder off camera.
Or maybe it's because it's been a little while and they're like, oh, maybe it wasn't so bad.
But anyways, he had his, I guess, kind of imprint on virtually everything. But his comment was, with immigration and things happening, there... in Canada here we have a mosaic, of culture. Yeah. And I'm not sure how true it is now. Maybe it's more true than it's been in a while. But in the States, they have this melting pot that you come in and you assimilate, you become American.
Yeah.
But there was definitely, there probably was some anxieties around the time about kind of like an Asian influence on Western culture, and what was this going to threaten kind of the, I guess, maybe the American way, or how society was going towards at the time. So that's why it's funny, because you look at the film and you're like, there's virtually unrecognizable as Los Angeles as what they knew back then, and even as we know today. There's too many Kardashians, for God's sakes. But
Yes.
I mean, the world that he was trying to, I guess, portray was something where cultures were really blending and really coming together, and it just happened to be, the Asian influence was very high. But there's also like there's different elements of like in that documentary that they were talking about, some of the big columns that you see.
Yeah, that's around. Yes.
That's around. They're just ginormous. That's very Egyptian.
Okay.
They're based on kind of some Egyptian designs.
Well, yeah, because even like the Tyrell building was pretty much a
pyramid.
pyramid,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
And
Good
like
point. The biggest Egyptian throwback.
One of the things I thought about it is that like Tyrell thought of himself as a creator. He thought himself as a god.
Yep.
He's like, I am your maker, right?
Yep.
And pharaohs were believed to be gods. So I
Gods,
think he put himself in a position where, and in a place that symbolized his godlike stature,
100%.
And so I mean, it makes sense that other elements in the city that is so heavily influenced by the Tyrell Corporation would include elements that would show that kind of
good.
thing.
I like that.
Guess who's teaching the lesson today?
I never thought about that. That's a very good point.
That was one of the points I actually did come up with, which is a point I'd never thought of before.
Yeah.
But then I was looking at it, I'm like, because I was thinking, first of all, I was thinking monolithic, but I'm like, that stuff, like, it's big, but monolithic is the wrong word, but it is godly in its mass and size and its pyramid, like.
Well, it's like a golden palace, like the lighting.
Yeah.
Kind of the theme. It's all gold.
Yes, it is. It is, yeah.
Like everything looks golden.
Yeah.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, because he was rich and spent all the money on his
Exactly.
luxuries and his space that was so heavily protected, but his one friend that he let in, and of course it got him killed. But what else?
Well, exactly. And the fact that, I mean, what I feel that it's, 1982, the absence of like any kind of formal government that's represented in the film, aside from these Bladerunners, and there is a police force,
A corrupt police
yeah,
force,
right,
we can
right.
tell, yeah.
Right, but there's no you don't see an appearance of a mayor or anyone in kind of like in office aside from Tyrell corporations being like, it kind of makes me remember or think of Wall-E with
yes.
is it Big and Large, I think is the corporation or whatnot.
Okay, yeah.
I just think of Walmart, but like I always thought it was so striking that they're really trying to prophesize that corporations, the importance of the corporation over a society. With this story, they're taking it to like a negative kind of, it's something to fear.
But
and to extent we're seeing a bit of that.
Yeah, that's what
the film's
I'm saying,
very
yeah.
prophetic, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's actually, I was gonna say it's maybe not quite on that level, but no, it's kind of at that level. Because we see like company names everywhere, and people base their styles and moods and what they buy on companies, and and there are companies that are big enough to run countries, and they have so much power, they have so much influence that even though technically they're not the mayor, they're not the president, but those people are the people that actually run a
Right,
place.
right. Well, you think of like the impact of that Amazon has had on day-to-day life, and the impact it's made on just consumer goods.
Yeah,
it's putting
manufacturing,
putting mom and pop shops out of the business. Well, even malls, being threatened by this one conglomerate that's one of the most profitable companies in the world right now.
Yeah, which is I think is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and it's true. And the thing is too is like you understand how and why those people have gotten into that position, but also you see the negative impact of those people being allowed to be in that position.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And again, that's just one piece of, kind of the how rich the pie is in terms of Blade Runner.
Yes.
Is that there's so many different ways that you and I can chit chat about it, or an academic can write about it, or someone can critique it. You can come at it at so many angles.
Yeah.
And that's just why I enjoy
the movie so much.
Movie so much, and I don't really tire of watching it over and over, because I find new things. You're telling me about the spread of Egyptian culture in the other areas. I'm like, yeah, you're right. That is totally from Tyrell.
Yeah. So but based on that, so I know you love the movie, but does that have you ever read the book?
Yes, I did. It's and I read it in university.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similar elements, but the movie is very different. But the author, Philip K. Dick, so he died before the movie, in the same year before the movie was released.
Okay.
But there's again why this documentary is so awesome, Dangerous Days. But they talk about how he wanted to visit the set of Ridley Scott's film. So I mean, Ridley Scott was a huge fan of Dick's work. Obviously, he's taken on the movie, right? But a lot of the people were they were taking him around set designs, different production props that were being made. And he said, "Oh, can you show me any dailies, or just can you guys show me any of your finished film, or wherever you're at in progress?" And there was after he saw, I think they showed him about 10 minutes of the film. I don't know if they identify which part of the films, or maybe it's kind of just like a buzz highlight reel kind of thing. But he was incredibly impressed with how close the vision was of Ridley Scott and all of his crew.
That is not what I thought you were going to say at all.
No. You would think it's very different.
I was going to say, I'm like, oh, Dick, he probably hated it.
No,
probably nothing like what I was expecting.
What are you doing? You're killing my masterpiece.
Vision. Yeah.
No, he was very complimentary, and I'm trying to look here and see if I wrote down a quote, but he said it was as if you hardwired my brain, and the output was what you showed me.
Really?
On the screen. Wow. So I mean, that's the ultimate compliment.
Yeah.
To someone working in any art form. Because usually you only hear about the stories where the author and the director or studio butted heads, and they felt like that they just butchered their work.
Yeah. So for this podcast, I also have read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, but this was years and years ago.
Yeah.
And if you listen to my episode about A Scanner Darkly, you would know.
Love that film.
I also like that film.
Too.
It's a crazy book, which I also haven't read
because
Keanu. I cannot read Philip K. Dick. I find his writing style boring. It bores me to tears, and I can't get it takes me very long to get through it. And you know that Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is not a long book whatsoever. I think it's under 300 pages or something. Yeah. And I think it took me 3 weeks to get to page 30, and I was like, fuck it, I'm not gonna do it for this episode. That's not a thing that's gonna happen today.
Not worth it.
It's not worth it. But one thing I didn't remember was how first of all, to me, the environment in the book and the environment in the movie are completely different. Right? Because in the book, according to the book, it's a dust bowl. Whereas in the movie, it's raining all the time, right?
So they didn't show him in any of the scenes that had rain, apparently.
Apparently, right? Because and that's one of the reasons why I got to bring up Blade Runner 2049
Yeah.
seemed more closer to the book than like Blade Runner because of like it was
setting
the atmosphere and setting. But also, even reading those first 30 pages of that book, you're like, this storyline is completely different than like, because in the book, like Deckard has a wife, he has a pet sheep on the roof, like, you know, the like, so in the movie, for example, there's a lot of people around, but in the book there's very few people around because they mention this like sideways because they had the advertisements about living off world, and in the book they mention that because there's some sort of toxin on Earth and you have to pass certain tests to get off of Earth, and people are just vacating Earth, right? So it's like there's a couple of really big juxtapositions that I was like, really? This seems very different to me. So when you said that, I was like, surprised. So you're like, oh, he must have hated it then because it's so different. And you're like, no, he loved it. It was exactly what was in my head. What?
They might have been smoking and sucking in too much tobacco and chemicals in the screening room. I don't know.
Maybe? I don't know.
Maybe it's it was kind of the integrity of the vision of the book.
Or maybe it's just like the feel, like the oppressive feel of you know, the whole thing. Yeah,
it's hard to know. It's got to take the Ridley Scott's word for it. That's what he said.
That's what he said. Exactly. Well, that's true, right? You know. So, or maybe it's because I only got to like page 30, 35 or whatever, and I didn't finish the book.
Yeah.
Maybe later on it rains quite a bit. I have no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. But there were definitely a few things in there that I was like, this is completely different. And the book also dwelled on like the concept of an emotion box that you'd plug in to get your day started and whatever. And I was like, what
the F is that?
It was very weird. And I'm okay with weird, but I think it's just, I love all of the stories that I have seen that came out of Philip K. Dick books, but I cannot read Philip K. Dick books, if you understand what I mean.
That's fair.
Yeah. It's just, it's his style. It's like the way he writes and stuff. It gets to me.
There's like a Twilight Zone-esque kind of series. I forget what channel or network it's on, but it's all Philip K. Dick stories.
Oh,
I only watched the
Dreams.
Yeah,
and it was on Space.
Yes. Yeah, I actually only watched the first episode that had Bryan Cranston in it. It was okay.
Yeah, but again, it is like the Twilight Zone. Every episode is different. Actually, it's more like a combination of Black Mirror and the Twilight Zone, because there's a lot of like a technology element to a lot of the episodes.
Yeah.
But it also has that Dickian weird space to it as well, if you know what I mean.
I think what I like about just think of other Philip K. Dick stories and just some of the patterns and like similarities and themes that kind of it's kind of like a thread through a lot of his material was this kind of like fear of technology.
Yes. Sorry, was it a fear of technology or an abuse of technology?
Well, yeah, maybe they're one and the same. I don't know.
Do you think so?
Well, I think it was also just, when I say like fear of technology, you know, it's fear of, you know, what are we building these machines for? What are we going to use for this when it comes to AI, something like a replicant? Now, it's interesting. They bring up question, you know, was it so much a fear of technology in Blade Runner? You know, the film, at least in the first and probably second act, like who's the enemy, who's the bad guy, and you constantly think, oh, it's the replicants. The replicants are bad. These are killing machines. They don't have human emotions. All of that. That's kind of how you're told how to see them. But especially in the third act, they kind of come off as more human.
Yeah.
Than who we're told who are humans. I mean, at that point, we still think, well, and he still could be. This is, again, one of the biggest debates that was brought up between the different cuts of the movie. But, you know, is Deckard. We can't talk about Blade Runner without talking about...
But is he a human or is he a replicant?
Exactly. Yeah. And, like, as you go on more and more in the film, like, you think that Rutger Hauer's character, like, he seems much more like a human than someone like Deckard, who's just like this he's kind of like an Eeyore.
Yeah, he's monotonous.
Moping around.
Yeah.
He doesn't have family around him. He lives alone. He's surrounded by these old photographs. He's trying to get out of the business of retiring replicants, but this is kind of like his last go at it before he ends his career, and who knows what he's going to do next. Maybe get off-world like everybody else.
Yeah.
But the way that technology is framed in the movie is interesting. That at first it's definitely you're supposed to be, you're being told, have a fear of this technology because look what it can do. It makes me think of something like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in the book Whatnot, that it's this monster who's created. It's artificial, but again, who's the real monster? Is it Dr. Frankenstein, or is it the
monster he created?
The monster he created. So there's a lot of kind of commonalities between even that book and
but I
what we
find
see
this
here.
more of a, like, I don't consider this. I've never thought of this movie as a fear of technology movie. I always thought of this movie as in showcasing an abuse of power, and like they bring up this fact at the end of the movie, like Rutger Hauer, like his replicant self calls him like, we're slaves and you need to treat us better, and all we want to do is live. That's all he wants, and based on his programming, all he knows how to do is kill. Yet I've seen all of these beautiful, wonderful things that are gonna get lost, and I can continue to experience these things because you were scared of me before I even existed.
Yeah, and they kind of just he just wants to prolong their life, and he just wants to be left alone. But he's forced because of his model. I forget, it's like
Nexus 6.
Nexus 6. His model is it has a shelf life.
4 years.
4 years, right?
Because all replicants have been built in with a shelf life. Yeah, all replicants.
An expiry, right?
Yeah.
More to the point, why I think there is a fear of technology, and it is, and we'll get to it, is Deckard a replicant or a human? Or if we're able to answer that question. But memories. Memories is like a big, I guess, theme in the film when it comes to... just think of Deckard's apartment with photographs everywhere. People are talking about memories, and back to difference in cuts. So the first version, the U.S. theatrical version that was released, there's a key scene. It's very quick, but in Deckard's apartment, he's in front of, I think it's like a grand piano or whatnot, but he's nodding off. But it's implied that he has like a daydream of the unicorn. It looks like it's right out of the Legend. Which is another Ridley Scott movie later on in the 80s. But he has, it's very brief, but it's a white unicorn that's galloping in some sort of magical forest. But it's very brief, and I think it's only on screen for maybe 4 or 5 seconds.
Okay.
But I believe that that wasn't included.
That was not included in the director's cut. I know that.
Oh, really?
It's that the unicorn thing is not in the director's cut.
It is definitely in the final cut.
Okay.
But why that piece of or why that scene's so important is because at the end, when they're leaving the apartment, Gaff is
picks up the...
Yeah, it's the origami unicorn. And it's like, well, why would he not make that for Deckard as maybe a going away present, because he knows he's leaving town with Rachel? Why would he choose a unicorn? Like, there's no other things that point in the movie aside from that dream. So how would Gaff know what Deckard had dreamt or had been dreaming about?
Oh, okay.
So that is that's a big cause for...
But is that memory or is that something else? Because dreams aren't necessarily memories.
Well, it's in his brain, I guess.
Yeah.
So he knows it's like the title. Do androids dream of electric sheep? So how would he know what he was thinking at that time?
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest unanswered questions of our time.
Yeah. Well, because
people have different opinions.
Even in the book, they don't really, if I
Explore
remember
that.
correctly, they don't really answer that question.
Yeah.
It is implied by the end of the book that he is a replicant as well, but it's never like solidified.
Yeah.
In any way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, and that's one of the big kind of questions and ambiguities that didn't make its way into the U.S. theatrical version, because that ending, so in the director's cut and the final cut, so it ends soon as Deckard and Rachel
Make it
in the elevator, and then the doors close. Boom.
Yeah.
Kick in the Vangelis awesome synthesized soundtrack.
Yeah.
Love that soundtrack.
Yeah.
But in the U.S. theatrical version, there was a scene after, so they're coming into, I don't know where it is, but they've left L.A.
I'm glad to know I'm not crazy, because I'm like,
you're not
when the
crazy.
movie ended, I was just like, isn't there a scene where they're driving through like green pastures or something, and they're talking to each other in the car? It's not raining. It's like it's sunshine and it's green. It's like a completely different color palette to the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there going, did I make that up? Maybe it's just like, and then it's like, I remember you telling me there were 4 different versions of it. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's in one of the other versions. But I was like, am I going nuts? I could have sworn it was this one.
Yeah. No, it was in the original theatrical version, and it was insisted upon by the studio. Again, Ridley Scott at the time didn't have as much authorial power as he did later in his days in Hollywood. But it's kind of that ride off into the sunset kind of moment that, it's a happy ending.
Yeah, they do get away together.
98% of the movie was dark as shit, like literally.
Yeah.
and in terms of the movie's tone, but boom, we're going to throw in this, and they get together and they escape.
Yeah.
But here's kind of like a funny tidbit. I remember when watching the documentary that a couple of the shots that come right after the elevator scene, it's like an aerial shot of there's clouds and green pastures and all of that. But that footage was unused footage from The Shining.
Oh my God! Really?
Yeah. So Stanley Kubrick gave him permission. Said, yeah, you can use these shots. Why not? They're not in the movie. Yeah. They're just additional aerial shots when you think of the iconic opening into The Shining.
Yeah.
When they're driving into the hotel there.
What is it? The
Overlook?
Hotel?
Overlook, yes. Yeah. Which looks like paradise until you get inside the House of Horrors.
That is true.
But that whole kind of like very... It just seems like it's tacked on and really doesn't fit the rest of the film. That was the studio insisting that they have that ending again to provide some more closure, and there's some really bad voiceover.
Well, for American movies for a very long time, it was insistent that there had to be a happy ending. Like action movies, horror movies, romances, whatever. There had to be a quote unquote, it may not have been perfect, but there was a quote unquote happy ending. That was the purpose of your story. Yeah, bad things happen, but you're gonna make it. It's like they didn't want to leave that to question. Whereas I think, people have gotten to the point where they got so cynical, they will not believe that nonsense. Yeah. We don't know if they got away. That's what life is. Boom, so to me, I feel like even though you're questioning it, like this ending, like where the doors shut, credits start, is a much more fulfilling ending than watching them go in the sunset. It just
seems so much more fitting for the movie.
For the movie, yeah.
Because there's a lot of again, another thing why I really like the movie and why I like Philip K. Dick novels is that they don't waste time giving you too much backstory. You're launched into this world that's strange, it's unfamiliar, and you're plopped in, and they hit go, and they're going on with the story. I really hate movies when it's too much kind of exposition or explanation of how we got to this point. Yeah. So there is like there is like an introductory screen with titles like.
Oh give, the screen,
that give up, a little bit of context of what the hell when someone says a replicant, you know what they're talking about, and kind of the what the current affairs of the world are. But I really like, and this is very characteristic of like Dick novels, is that he plops you in. He'll refer to different objects. Like just think of a Scanner Darkly, a scramble suit.
Yes.
It's like, I've never heard that term. I mean, they explain it a bit in the novel, but they don't waste a lot of time on it.
They're like, it's a thing that you can see people, but you can't see people. And then they keep going.
And you're
like,
just like, huh? But I kind of like when authors, or especially filmmakers, when they inject ambiguity in their films, because they challenge you to think more.
Well, because you don't
spoon feed you.
Get across a story, you don't need to be spoon fed all the information. You just need to know enough to understand what's going on. Like, I was watching, what is it? Maniac. And they have this ongoing.
That's a very strange.
That's a very strange show.
I did like it.
It's good. It's well done. But like one of the things I found really interesting about it is that it takes place clearly in a future state from right now.
Yeah.
But they do not explain anything of that future state. They're like, no, I'm here. You're like, it's made as if we're in the same time period, right?
Yeah. So
like if you, for example, make a movie that takes place now, you don't explain what a laptop is, you don't explain what a phone is, you don't explain, what Snapchat is. People just know. And that's how that show is as well. It's just like, what is that thing called where they can pay for them to pay for something, somebody follows them around and tells them ads or whatever. It's a specific term they use in the show.
Mm-hmm.
But like they never explained that. And for like 4 episodes, I was like, what the fuck who is she? What are you talking about? What's happening? But to understand the story, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
But as you watch the movie, you understand what the concept is. The show, you understand what the concept is. Yeah. And the thing is that makes a lot of shows boring or whatever. They would take the time to sit there and expose like this is this thing and this is why she's doing it and blah 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 blah. Like you don't need that. Just let it be part of your world.
Yeah.
Done.
There's a funny scene in Maniac. Emma Stone's character, she's at home, and her dad, I don't know if he's physically in there or whatever, that box in the backyard.
In the backyard, and she's like, "It's time for you to come out," and he's like, "No, I'm good."
And that was very much just left open ended, and that's part of the charm. I was like, this is hilarious, because they don't even try to explain really what's going on with that strange device.
Well, the thing is that
I'm just like, this is brilliant.
Well, I think that's the writing style of the show is you are being placed within this person's world. This person knows what's going on. They're not going to explain what's going on every day. You're like, I can't believe my dad's in this box because my mom died last year and now he's got crippling anxiety, so he's in the box. No, it's her life. She knows this. She's like, oh, he's in the box still, and walks away.
Yeah.
That's what a normal person would do. And I think that's one of the reasons why, even though the show is really weird, it works really well and connects with people because you're just like, you're in their life. They know this. So you don't need to know it. It's just what's going on. Yeah. And I think it works better than a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Because of it.
Yeah, exactly. So do you want to talk... do you want to debate if Deckard's a replicant or not a replicant?
Oh my god!
Or you?
I feel like this is such like a bait question. Like you're just like, oh, here's the reel. We're fishing it in. Let's do it. Yes. What stance would you like to take?
Well, it's funny because, Blade Runner 2049, you think, okay, this is a sequel. Okay, maybe we're going to find out 100% in the film's narrative if he's a replicant or not.
Yeah.
But you don't.
You don't. No.
It's still open-ended, and actually that's what made me even appreciate that film.
Well,
even further.
One thing I really liked about 2049 is that one of my biggest problems with especially sequels that have taken so long to come out or remakes and whatever, is that besides the basic concept, they seem to forget the original material, like completely.
Yep.
Like style, visuals, directing, character tropes, all that kind of stuff. Like they seem to just be like, okay, so it's a guy who kills replicants and it's the future. Let's take that, but everything else about the previous thing they'd forget.
Yeah.
And
Let's explore new territory.
Yeah, and the thing that they did with this movie is that they did not forget the original material in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's entrenched in the DNA of everything in that movie.
Yes, and what I like about the movie is that it's not a remake, it's not a reimagining. They didn't forget the original material. It actually seemed like in that world, 30 years had passed by.
Yeah.
Technology moved ahead a little bit.
But
it's
things still very much look like they're in that world.
Like they're in that world. Exactly. Like everything looked like it belonged. Yeah. And to me, that is a huge aspect of it. And one of the things that made it work, it was you still had that, oppressive feeling. You still had those crowded spaces. You still had, even his vehicle. It just looked like a newer model of Deckard's car,
Yeah, it still had that spinner.
Yeah. And
it still looked like a spinner, but just with some slight updates. But
to it, yeah.
But it's kind of interesting because... Okay, 2049 and the original Blade Runner 2019, so what's that, 30 years?
30 years, yeah.
You would think there'd be further advanced. Mm-hmm. This is because I'm taking kind of opinions and knowledge of our world, like the real world or non-filmic world.
Yeah.
That you think that advances in certain technologies would be farther along. Mm-hmm. But you got to kind of think, it seems like people are still trying to escape off-world,
yes.
As you see the Zeppelin constantly
moving back and forth
in the original. So it kind of adds to the richness of being like, okay, they made some tweaks, but this society is still very lost, and people aren't coming back in droves to come back to Earth. It's not like WALL-E.
Yeah, and it's the same society. Like it's the same.
Yeah,
it's the
things
same
can get better.
Yeah. And it seems more like a proper evolution of the space. Like it's like if you turn off you turn off a game, but the game is running in the background, and for those 30 years, like it's like SimCity or something, just kept running in the background, and things evolved and changed and whatever, was perpetual, and then you turned it back on and you're like, oh, it's still the same city, but it's just moved ahead a little bit. And I loved it for that. And yeah, they tweaked a little things, like it was a little bit brighter. There you can see things, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Things were a little bit more sleek, because one of the things about Blade Runner is that things were dirty. Like they were dirty. Like there was lots of paper, there's lots of rags.
Very
and
industrial
stuff.
still.
Yeah, whereas this one, it's like a lot of the structures and stuff were super clean lines. There was no clutter places. You know what I mean? Like it was just tidied
in general.
Or empty. Yeah, that was one of the things as well.
Like deserted.
And like they just sort of moved technology forward, but they kept the world intact. Yeah. And that was a big selling point for this movie. And then of course, the story was good and the acting was good, and
a big fan of the director Denis. Is it Villeneuve?
Yes, Villeneuve.
Yes. Yeah. Villeneuve.
Yes.
Denis Villeneuve. I love Arrival.
Mm-hmm. I have not.
No.
Tell you the truth, I have not seen it.
Yeah, you gotta see it.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Like, what was the other? Like, apparently, Blade Runner 2049 was the only movie of his I've actually watched. What was the other movie? He did one more.
He did Prisoners. Did you see that with Jake Gyllenhaal?
Oh wait, I did see that movie. And the end of that movie is, oh my god!
Yeah.
That was one of the few movies where it ended where it did on like a cliffhanger, and I was just like, you can't do this. What are you talking about? Usually I love it. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Oh, yeah. But this one,
anxiety inducing.
Oh my god! I was like, let's flip tables. What are you talking about?
Yeah, he's one of my favorite kind of like new directors, and he's Canadian too.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Right now, I don't think they're in production stage, but he's directing the Dune.
Oh my god! really? I
Yeah,
actually think
so
he'd do
he's
I think he'd
doing
do a really good job
like
with
a
that.
I guess a reboot or reimagining of Dune.
Mm-hmm.
So
It might be
So there you go.
closer to the book.
yeah.
I think is probably what they're doing.
Um.
So I think that would actually, especially the way he did 2049, it's that same kind of like dust-filled weird structures in the desert
Yeah.
kind of feel to it.
Oh,
So yeah, I could see that
he's definitely
working.
like primed for making a movie of that kind of like scale and
Mhm.
like expectation from not just like Hollywood but from fans.
Yeah, I don't know how.
He's got some clout.
Yeah, I don't
got
know
some good
how
movies under his
they're
belt.
going to really like Dune is one of those weird, overly complicated sci-fi movies or books. Sorry, no, I'll start at the books, like complicated sci-fi books that when translated into like
That's what I'm
2 hour,
saying.
2.5 hour
Unfilmable.
movie is. Yeah, it falls apart. Like, and that Dune movie, I'm sorry to say,
It's messed
was
up.
bad.
Yeah.
It had really cool visuals and like the ideas were there,
Should
but
watch
it's
it again.
just horrible.
Yeah.
But when I finally they did a mini series a few years ago, and I think it was
that's
like
right.
8 hours or whatever, and they
Yeah.
fleshed out the story and they filled in
I
the
never
holes that
seen
were
it.
missing from the actual Dune movie, and then I was like, oh, I get it now. You know, it was one of those things. So I'm kind of hoping that he does manage to make that work. That would be really cool.
If anybody's up to the challenge or have faith in anybody, it's definitely him.
It's definitely him.
I would
Okay.
say yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll definitely see how that goes. One of the other kind of like interesting aspects of, and you kind of hinted towards it, but the industrial, dusty, dirty kind of like, I guess like production design
Yeah.
of Bladerunner, that, you know, half of it was a bit of necessity because the budget for the movie was $20 million at the time, which, I mean, now that's peanuts.
Yeah.
And you think back then, you're like, oh, that must have been decent, but it's still a bit restrictive,
Yeah.
especially when you're creating a movie that's kind of like, I don't know, an adult Star Wars.
Yeah.
Where you have to
Yeah.
to basically kind of recreate everything because nothing can look recognizable
Yeah.
as you know, the world that they lived in then.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did was, which is actually, it really worked for the movie and the theme and the tone, but they retrofitted a lot of the backlots out in LA. So there's one of the backlots. It's supposed to be for New York City. So if you're shooting a movie or TV show that, oh, it's in New York, oh, this is the backlot that you shoot on. But they really had the idea to retrofit. So what that means is just basically you're building on top
Of it.
So-
Yeah.
so
the
they
structure's
weren't-
already there. Yeah.
Exactly. So they would put all like these kind of like industrial columns or pipes and just kind of slap it on the front facade
Yeah.
of this backlot and just really make it look you know, very different. So that's, I mean, that kind of I guess route to
Yeah.
production design, it you know, one, it was cost effective because
Yeah.
they didn't have to build everything from scratch, because I mean, a lot of that budget was dumped into you know, a lot of like, you know, the special effects,
Yeah.
and a lot of like miniatures, and then creating these spinners that look like they're actually, you know, taking off from
Something, yeah.
from the street.
Yeah.
So, you know, it still did have like a restrictive budget. And one of the like kind of key people when it came to like the production design and everything, his name, I don't know if you've come across him, but Sid Mead. But he's basically, he didn't just work on movies, but he was like an industrial designer. Here I'm just reading his Wikipedia page, known as a neo-futuristic concept artist. But anyways, he did a lot of designs for a lot of other big movies like Aliens. So that's Jim Cameron's sequel to Ridley Scott's Alien.
Sid Mead, M-E-A-D?
Yeah, or sorry, it's SYD MEAD.
Found it. See,
and Tron.
I'm a very visual person, so I
Yeah.
need to see his face before I can be like, oh, that guy, or I don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
he worked on Star Trek, the motion picture.
I actually do
says Time
recognize.
Cop.
Wow. Okay,
See,
that came
it
back
all comes
around.
back.
I
to the
actually
hair.
do recognize his face.
Yeah. So very kind of like important figure when it comes to, anything kind of like 20th century. He's still working to this day, I think.
Yeah,
But
and
20th
he's
century
85.
kind of like visionary kind of films, right? And then, I mean, a lot of it's tied to science fiction. But
Yeah.
one thing that was really like cool to learn about his kind of approach to design is, Ridley Scott would be like, okay, we need, a taxi cab or something, or can you conceptualize a parking meter, things like that. So, a lot of kind of like industrial designers, they'll just design the object itself, and then the rest, the background, it could just be on white paper.
Yeah.
But his kind of method of working was he visualizes the object in its environment.
Oh. Okay.
So when he was tasked with a lot of these kind of designs, he would be creating basically kind of like the set. And so Ridley Scott took from a lot of those, like he apparently he wasn't supposed to be really like actively working for too long on the film. He just hired them for, it was supposed to be a short time, but he kept extending I guess his work on it because it was so good. But he was very key to coming up with a lot of the concepts for, how does this main street in LA, LA is so vast and big and sprawling, but how does he visualize his objects in these environments? So it wasn't just the objects that
he created the world.
He created, but
he
he really had a huge part in, all the big neon signs that are littered. I don't know if he was tasked with doing the umbrella, but I wouldn't put past him with the lights. It looks like the lightsaber umbrellas. I have a friend who actually has one. Who bought
cool.
one? Exactly.
Yeah.
And I haven't showed out yet.
Well,
so.
I guess that explains like all of the movies that you've described. One thing they have in common is that even though they're strange environments, nothing ever seems out of place in those environments because all of the objects are made to be in the environment. Like he creates the environment
That's a very good point.
They're supposed to be in. Therefore, if he creates something that looks like it doesn't fit, he's not going to use it. He's going to redo it to fit into the world he thinks it belongs in, right?
And actually, he has said that like when he's designing stuff, he's also thinking about how would this actually work or function.
Yes. Yeah.
So super smart genius. So like he would talk about with just think of the spinners.
Yeah.
How does this actually function instead of just having some wires carrying up the car to make it look like it's floating. He actually designed it with in mind of how it actually propel itself to lift off the ground with turbines and all this other stuff. So
but that would also
again,
go
adds
into
to the realism.
It adds to the realism because if you understand how something is supposed to work, you can decide how it's supposed to move as well, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the movement, because there was definitely like a weightiness to like these vehicles and stuff when they took off. Whereas like you watch other movies, even like Back to the Future, where all of a sudden it's like they're like feathers and they're in the sky suddenly, compared to like, the vehicles actually looked like there was effort to get off the ground to get to.
It's just garbage.
Then,
for Back to the Future too.
Oh, God.
It's not plutonium anymore.
That's all you need. It's fine. Yeah. So so that's really awesome, actually.
Yeah, I there's so many movies that Sid Mead was a part of, like production or pre-production, that as a kid growing up in the 80s and when he's a younger teen, myself, in the 90s, I mean, a lot of the movies that he worked on, really do have like a special place in my heart.
Yeah. So do you think, like, based on the movie list he's been part of, you think he's had a very high influence on the type of films you enjoy or
now.
your view of films in general?
100%. Like his, I guess his kind of, you mean Sid Mead?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, his kind of like approach to just conceptual design and all of that, 100%.
Yeah.
Would be very influential. Like I'm just here. Look, these are all films that they have various or varying levels of being good or rotten.
Yeah.
But here are some like here it said, in 1979, Mead worked with major studios on the feature films Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Okay.
So that's the first one, which
Yeah.
that's a pretty bizarre Star Trek movie in and of itself.
Yeah, but
But-
it wasn't that movie. So, like, one thing I know about that movie is it was supposed to be just a 2-part made-for-TV movie, but
Oh, I
because
didn't
of
know
the
that.
success of Star Wars, they decided to make it a like a film, and that's one of the reasons why the movie has such, like, I mean, the plot of it's crap and everything, fine, I'm not going to defend it, but that's also one of the reasons why, like, the pacing of the movie is so disjointed, right? It was supposed to,
Yeah.
it's supposed to slow down at a point, and then, you know, then you wait like a couple of weeks or whatever, then you see the next part of it, and you got to build back up the story, so the pacing ends up being odd compared to if it was made as a film, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's actually one of the big kind of special effects people on Star Trek: The Motion Picture. He was one of the important people on Blade Runner.
Really? Lots of Star Trek
but
connections. I like
it's
this.
Douglas Trumbull. I actually met him once. It was at the TIFF Lightbox,
Yeah.
and there was it was like a 70 millimeter print of 2001,
Yeah.
which was that was kind of like his pioneer work. Just when it comes to any kind of like special effects at the time, and I mean that film is in and of itself kind of a reinvention of science fiction at that time in the late 60s. But
But they hated it when it first came out.
That's right.
They all, like, critics and audiences, everybody hated it when it first came out.
And that's very similar, maybe not as intense of the hate, but the reception of Blade Runner, getting back to Blade Runner,
wasn't the greatest either.
was mixed.
Yeah.
And it really was, in the 80s, people were getting Beta machines or Betamax and into VHS. That really is what kind of propelled it to cult status, because Blade Runner took off when it went to like the home viewing kind of market.
Yes.
And that's kind of what prompted, is it Warner Brothers? I'm trying to remember who the studios. Anyways, might not be. But anyways, the studio, why they even bothered with having the 10-year anniversary director's cut.
Yeah, yeah.
They can make money on it.
I actually have a picture of the. Yeah, it is Warner Brothers.
Is it? Okay, good.
Yes.
But yeah, back to Douglas Trumbull. But I mean, one of his biggest kind of special effect kind of moments is the Stargate in 2001.
Oh,
and you see kind of cues of that in Star Trek, the motion picture, that there's some wacky. I don't think it's a full-on Stargate sequence, but there's some crazy sequences.
But yeah, you definitely feel the connections now between the films. But yeah, any other notes or anything you want to go over for Blade Runner? Because I see, like, you keep turning page after page after page after page.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can go on about the movie forever. Whether you want to sit here and listen to me yammer on is another thing.
Oh, actually, one thing I did want to bring up from the movie. So one thing in the movie that actually really bothered me, and I don't know if I've ever picked up on this before or if it just hit me now or not, but there's the scene where Rachel and Deckard are in the apartment. Oh,
his apartment?
In his apartment, and remember he passes out drunk, and or he's tired / drunk, whatever, and then he gets back up, and then what does he tell Rachel? And she wants to leave, right? And he follows her and like shuts the door on her and like pushes her against the wall and whatever. And I was like,
awkward romance.
Yeah, I was like,
interaction.
I don't understand what's happening really. Yeah. Like, and I was like, the whole scene just made me. It wasn't just that it was awkward. It just made me really uncomfortable, and was like, I don't think that's how you're supposed to interact with something you supposedly love or are trying to love, whether it be a replicant or a real person. Yeah. You know? And, like, I mean, that scene kind of, like, it just struck me. I was like, oh. Like, I literally sat back and was like, oh, what's going on? Like, I was like, oh, this was really cool up until this exact moment. Like, why is this a thing? You know? Yeah.
No, and I mean, I just did a quick Google search, and there's a lot of chatter or of that scene online. You know, people are calling it like a rape scene.
Yeah.
In a sense. I'm just trying to.
Well, because he's also telling her, he's like, tell me that you love me, tell me that you want me to touch you, and like all this kind of stuff. And she's legitimately like, she's scared, and he's like, say it, and then she says it, and you're like, you're in an abusive relationship all of a sudden. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, it comes across just very, like, it's more than awkward. It's off-putting and it's inappropriate or something. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just a lot.
I mean, if you're looking at it from just like a narrative standpoint, you know, again, he's not he's not your kind of like typical kind of American kind of protagonist.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right? In the sense that kind of his character can be questionable at different times. That I think that scene, it's meant to be that, you know, in a world that is, you know, it's become kind of very an alienating kind of world that people, obviously you see the different scenes where people are in the streets and they're, you know, they're going to strip clubs or they're stopping by their the soup stand. So there's still a lot of people there, but the world's very dark. It's very it's very grim.
Yeah,
is what I meant to say. It's if I'm looking at it a little bit deeper, it's like he doesn't really know how to initiate that kind of contact in that kind of world where, again, humanity's being threatened by the fact that these replicants that you know, they're slaves to the human race. But especially his job title is a Bladerunner. He's to retire to kill any
but
of
he
these
also
delinquent
can't do it
machines.
anymore.
He can't do it anymore. So he seems like he's out of place, in a sense, and not just like in this kind of apocalyptic LA, but
like, has
in
he
terms
lost
of
his
humanity,
place
that
because he is lost his purpose, I guess.
well, again, it's like if he stops being a Blade Runner, and this is, I mean, for all we know, we don't know how long he's been doing it, but we're led to know that he's been doing this for a long time, and it's wearing on him and his sense of humanity. That, you know, well, what's the point of killing these machines? What is it doing? Is it helping the society? What am I going to do next when I stop? Because this isn't good for me. I don't like this kind of work anymore. I need to get out of here. And then he meets Rachel, who's a bit of a glimmer of hope, kind of like a rose between two thorns.
Yeah.
To use that analogy, that she is kind of like a beacon of hope, that there is a life to be had after just who knows how long he'd been just killing replicants and coming home to no one.
Yeah.
But again, when was the last time that he's made love to another person or anything like that? So I think that scene, I think it's meant to be super awkward, and that he's not dipping her and giving her, you know, like a sweet kiss or anything, but it's abrupt. It seems like he's crossing the line. He's being very forceful and aggressive, and I think it just speaks to, you know, being critical of his kind of humanity, that he's lost it.
Yeah, no, I that.
And he can't even love anymore, or love in like a civil sense of the word. But that scene's been a big topic of debate for a long time.
Yeah, I mean
on what it really means.
Yeah, I think it just comes across horribly, you know, in general.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's lots of movies and stuff where people are awkward in those situations, and they can come across as like either combative or not violent, but hostile and stuff like that. But I find, like, you know, like that sequence really just got to me, surprisingly. And tell you the truth, like, until it came on, I was just like, I guess I didn't even remember it really.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know. Because I remembered really, like, the part where she's at the piano, and I remember them being in the apartment and having, like, a moment. But, like, that I don't remember. Like, I didn't remember at all. So one thing that just triggered in my mind, actually, the replicants remind me of something. So there's
Yep.
George R. R. Martin that a lot of us know of because of Game of Thrones
Who?
and stuff.
What show you
but-
speak of?
But before / during him, writing his big epic and all that kind of stuff, he used to write short sci-fi stories, not fantasy stories, right?
Cool.
And
I didn't know that.
I had his volume of his book called Dream Songs, which is a collection of his stories.
Yeah.
And one of the stories, and it actually really reminds me of the issue of the replicants in it. Like, it's something that was created by people to protect them, but they're not allowed to interact with the general public because to them they're dangerous. And I really wish I could remember the name of the story. But I don't have the book anymore, and I'm searching online and I'm not really finding the list of stories that I'm looking for. But anyway, so in this story, what it is that humans are at war on this distant planet that has like a higher gravity or whatever. And they have soldiers that are trained in that higher gravity, so they're bigger and they're stronger than regular humans, right?
I'm loving this already.
they never go to Earth or whatever, but they're out battling whatever. But when they get to a certain point, they get to retire. They get to pick to go wherever they want in the world. That's what they're told, So this guy's retiring. He's about to leave his like base and stuff, and they're like, "Well, where do you want to go? You can go to Venus, you can go to Saturn, you can go to whatever." He's like, "I want to go to Earth," and they're like, "No." He's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I'm out here risking my ass and watching my friends die and whatever, and I can't go to the place that I'm protecting?" And they're like, "No, you can't go there. Like, you can pick anywhere you want, but you can't go there." So finally, like, they talk, whatever, and he's like, "No, I'm going to go to Earth." And they're like, "You know what? Fine." So they put him in this ship. He goes in, and it's filled with food, and it's all luxurious and stuff, and the captain's talking about, "Buckle in, are you ready to take off?" and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And all of a sudden, he realizes is that they've turned up the gravity even higher in the space that he's in, and they crush him to death, right? Because they prefer to kill him than to let him be with the public, because he's too big, he's too strong, he's too whatever. He could hurt people. We don't know what he's going to be like with the general. And so instead of just letting this person be, he could have gone to Earth and done absolutely nothing, been like, "Sup?" And that was it. You'll never know. But they're so fear-mongering about it. And it's the same thing with the replicants. It's like, we can't let them have emotions. We can't let them live too long because we don't know, they're trained for specific purposes. And once they've outlived that purpose,
to fight their wars and to build their society
and to be like
off-world.
sex bots and all that kind of. Sorry, they call them pleasure models.
Models. You gotta give them more credit than that.
Yeah, you can't let them be more than they are.
Than to serve their singular purpose.
Their singular purpose, and that it also reminds you of things that are in our society, like racism and class systems that are and things like that. Where like, no, if you're born in this class system, these are the things you can do, and you can't get out of it. And like I said earlier, like even the replicant called themselves slaves, which of course harkens back to slavery. Where you were brought here, or you were allowed to procreate for a specific purpose. You cannot get out of this purpose, right? If you try to, we will take you down, and that's what they did. So like, there's a lot of moral and ethical and quandaries that are brought up by like this film and the way it's structured in the future, that it's still problems that we have today will be problems that we'll have tomorrow if we don't think about it better.
I couldn't have said it better. No, I mean, when films are made, like, even though let's say they're about like history that happened hundreds of years ago, or it's about the future, it could be happening thousands of years in the future. Star Trek, for instance, or decades.
Yeah,
they're always.
Okay, first of all, Star Trek, hundreds of years in the future.
Is it hundreds?
Hundreds.
Oh,
it's a 23 and 2400s. Yes.
Well, I do respect Star Trek, but I am, if I have to pick a side, I am a Star Wars.
You're not. No.
I am a Jedi.
Yeah. But but that's history, though. We're talking about the future. Thank you.
I guess why I brought that up is, Films they're always often a bit symptomatic of the time in which they're made. It doesn't matter if it's about, something future that's happening in like, a far off planet or in a galaxy far, far away, or something that's medieval. But you can always find, especially the better films, a bit of social commentary on, things that are happening in the present time. So when you think of like early 80s, it's like, oh, we're, Vietnam's done. We're moving into a new decade.
And people are scared.
MTV's on TV. What the hell is this?
Yeah.
Actually, it in that documentary, Ridley Scott says, he was very influenced by MTV at the time when he made this film. Yeah,
Okay.
he was a fan. He was a big
Yeah.
fan of it. Just the way that he saw these the music videos as kind of like mini films.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
Right.
They used to put
It was,
lots of effort into those videos for sure.
and you see some of that translation a bit into, especially when you look at some of the production design with, there's TVs everywhere, and the hairstyles and the fashion. Ridley Scott was very much involved in a lot of decisions that were made about, what's Rachel going to look like? What is Daryl Hannah's character going to look like? And what's this other character going to look like, especially when it came to fashion? And you can see, okay, the film's supposed to take place in 2019, but it's very 80s.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah, but there's also that, which is fun. There's a juxtaposition of the new and the old, right? Because even though Rachel's look is technically very 80s, especially because she's got like those big like shoulder pads and stuff, it's actually like the style is actually goes further back. It's like more like 1940s and 50s. It's the hairstyle, the way the suit fits her, and all that kind of stuff, like it's.
Because I was thinking more about Daryl Hannah.
Daryl Hannah is very 80s, but even when he goes to like that strip club and that the girl with like the snake and stuff, and she was on the thing with the see-through like jacket, and she's like running, and that whole sequence is so super 80s. It's like it's incredible.
It's hilarious.
Yeah,
it's awesome. So, but going back to your kind of like a bit of your comments on social commentary and slavery and things like that. Here, I'm just gonna read. It's the I think this is the last. These are the last lines that Rutger Hauer's replicant said. Right? It's the tears in the rain kind of monologue.
Yeah, but isn't the tears in the rain thing? Didn't he come up with it? If I remember correctly, I don't know. There was something. There was some part of that speech. That's
one of my favorite parts of that film. It's so
well done. Yeah,
it's so good. But here,
sorry, interrupted. Go ahead.
That's okay. Here, I'll read it. So, he's a slave, right? And his time is up. That he's gonna die in front of Deckard on the roof because his expiry. He's done. But this is what he says: "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe." Okay, I'm not doing the delivery justice, but he says, I've seen things. You
have to cry, pretend it's raining on you.
That's right. I need to stick a huge nail through my hand.
Yes.
But I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams. I don't even know what that is. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. So
it's someplace, yeah.
It's someplace. All of those moments will be lost in time. Like tears in the rain, time to die, and that's it. So it's funny because he's speaking on his experience as being a machine for building humanity off world. There's other scenes where he talks about like fighting wars. I forget what the lines are, but this is really interesting because it's coming from a slave's perspective.
Yeah.
But he's seeing that the end is happening now, and it's kind of an interesting take on memory. He's saying that all those moments will be lost in times like tears in the rain. Yeah. That these replicants that they're to base an identity on, they're given memories, especially Rachel.
The Nexus 6, they don't have memories.
Rachel's
right?
not Nexus 6.
Yeah, Rachel is different. So she has implanted memories, but those
yes.
replicants don't have
Oh, they
implanted
don't.
memories. No, if I like, that's what I got out of the movie. As far as I
Okay.
know, they don't have implanted memories.
But anyway, so his memories, it's very kind of just telling on when you think of like just life in general, that how will you be memorialized? I mean, once one of these replicants die, they're done. Like who's going to be left around to talk about them? Like they don't have kids.
They don't have kids. They don't have families.
But you have
they
to
don't
see
have
Blade Runner
anything,
2049.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert! Too late. I already told you.
Yeah. Well, no, I think where that's going is just that you realize his memories of the wars he fought or anything, or of hating.
Yep.
His memories is things that are his, like he noticed this and he noticed this, and now it's just going to be gone. Yeah. And one of the reasons why he wanted to live is he's like, these things shouldn't be lost. And I think all of us understand that feeling. Most people are afraid of death because they don't want to be forgotten and they don't want who they are to be lost. And it shows a level of humanity in something that's not supposed to be human. And
again,
that's
it's like
why
these replicants are actually more human
than
the humans in the film.
Yeah.
Than Deckard, for sure.
For sure. And I think
he wants to live.
Yeah,
that wasn't part of his programming, right?
And the thing is, right before that, Deckard didn't care about living. Deckard was just like, I go through emotions and that's it. And now he was able to find something to do, not just through Rachel, but because this guy comes along who's supposed to not really understand humanity and shows him that no, he gets it more than you do. Yeah.
I just thought that scene, I mean, it's such a well kind of acted and delivered scene, and it's a nice fitting kind of ending.
It is.
But it makes me think it's like, a photo's worth 1,000 words, but this is it's kind of the opposite. Like the words are worth like 1,000 kind of ideas.
Ideas and pictures
about mortality and all of that.
Yeah. It's a concept that's coming across that can touch on
exactly.
different levels. Well, I actually think that since we hit the end of the movie, I think that might be a good point to end.
We never fully debated if Deckard's a replicant or not, but
no, we did not.
But that's part of the charm of the film, so we won't spoil it.
But it's
exactly.
Fine.
To each their own.
Yeah, I think if we get into that debate, we're going to be here for another 2 hours.
Yeah.
We're going to be Googling the whole time, researching here's proof of this and here's proof of this. This is what this person said, and look what Sartre said about what creates a man and blah blah blah.
I think Ridley Scott. Here, I'm looking at a couple quotes. He's come out because he's so tired of people asking him.
Yeah.
He said he is a replicant, but then he'll often leave people with cryptic answers.
But is it up to him to decide if Deckard's a replicant or not? Isn't it more
up
to the author, Philip K. Dick? Because Philip K. Dick, you can't ask him that question anymore, right? So he's the one who originally posed the query, and if Ridley Scott's interpretation is that he's a replicant, that doesn't mean he's a replicant unless you get it from the person who originally came up with the concept.
And then that opens up the whole debate of
look what you've pulled me into. What's wrong
authorial
with you?
integrity and who has the final say.
Exactly.
But again,
exactly.
I mean, and again, that goes back to why I love Blade Runner so much, is because it at the end of the film, it has more questions than it answers, and I think that just makes for a rich kind of audience or film going experience.
Yeah.
And I can't wait till the next Blade Runner. 2089.
I'd watch
okay,
that one too.
well, I'll shut up about Deckard and replicant theories.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. We came up with a couple of movies you might come back for, so we'll wait for those to happen. So you'll definitely have to come back and chat some more, and maybe we'll get into
please have me.
to more debates and philosophy and ideas of
love it.
cinematic wondrousness. I'm saying stupid words for no reason. I'll stop. So anyways, that's it for this episode of Off My Shelf. Until next time, you can follow along on Instagram and Twitter at ohmyshelf, or you can send me an email at ohmyshelf@gmail.com. On the next episode, we'll be talking about the movies Breakfast of Champions and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Hope you'll be here to listen.
Bye.